Have you ever felt that inexplicable pull, that gentle whisper from somewhere beyond the veil of ordinary reality? Perhaps it happened in a quiet moment just before sleep, when the world grew still and something deeper seemed to stir within your consciousness. Maybe it was during a time of profound loss, when grief opened doorways you never knew existed, revealing glimpses of a reality far more expansive than what your eyes could see. Or it might have been in those sacred pauses between heartbeats, when time seemed to suspend itself and you sensed the presence of something magnificent, something that spoke directly to the deepest chambers of your soul. These moments are not accidents. They are not tricks of an overactive imagination or the product of wishful thinking. They are invitations, gentle beckons from realms that exist parallel to our everyday experience, realms that have been calling to humanity since the dawn of consciousness itself. And if you've ever wondered whether these experiences hold deeper meaning, whether there truly exists a spiritual dimension beyond what modern science readily acknowledges, then you're not alone in this profound inquiry. Edgar Cayce understood this longing intimately. Known as the sleeping prophet, this remarkable man spent his life serving as a bridge between our physical world and the sacred dimensions that surround us. But here's what makes his story so compelling, so deeply relevant to your own spiritual journey. Cayce wasn't born with supernatural powers or mystical abilities that set him apart from the rest of humanity. He was, in many ways, just like you and me, a seeker wrestling with questions about purpose, meaning, and the nature of existence itself. What transformed Cayce into one of history's most documented psychic phenomena was his willingness to surrender to something greater than his rational mind, to trust in the wisdom that flows from dimensions beyond our ordinary perception. Through thousands of readings conducted over decades, he revealed intricate details about what he called the hidden realms of the spirit world, dimensions where consciousness continues to evolve, where the soul's true journey unfolds, and where the answers to our deepest questions patiently await our discovery. But here's where Cayce's vision becomes profoundly personal for each of us. He taught that these hidden realms are not distant, unreachable places reserved for prophets and mystics. They are intimate dimensions of reality that surround us constantly, influencing our thoughts, our dreams, our intuitive flashes, and our moments of deepest knowing. Every synchronicity you've experienced, every time you've felt guided by an invisible hand, every instance when you've known something beyond logical explanation, these are touches from the hidden realms that Cayce spent his life exploring and sharing with the world. Think about the questions that have haunted you in your quietest moments. Where did you exist before this physical incarnation? What happens to the essence of who you are when your body can no longer sustain life? Are the people you've loved and lost truly gone, or do they continue their journey in dimensions your physical eyes cannot perceive? Why do you sometimes feel such a profound sense of homesickness for a place you've never been, such deep recognition for souls you've supposedly just met? These aren't merely philosophical curiosities. They are the heart cries of a soul that remembers its origins and longs to understand its eternal nature. Cayce's sacred vision offers something remarkable, not just answers to these questions, but a framework for understanding your own direct experiences with the spiritual dimensions of existence. Through his revelations about the Akashic records, that cosmic library where every soul's journey is eternally preserved, we begin to grasp how our individual stories are woven into the greater tapestry of universal consciousness. Through his descriptions of the various planes of existence, we start to comprehend why certain places feel sacred, why some relationships carry the weight of eternity, why particular moments in our lives seem to shimmer with otherworldly significance. What's particularly beautiful about Cayce's teachings is how they honor both the mystical and the practical aspects of spiritual growth. He didn't present these hidden realms as escape routes from earthly responsibility, but as sources of wisdom and guidance that can transform how we navigate our human experience. According to his vision, understanding these sacred dimensions doesn't pull us away from life. It helps us live more consciously, love more deeply, and serve more authentically. Perhaps you've felt this truth stirring within you already. Maybe you've had dreams that felt more real than waking life, moments when you seemed to communicate with loved ones who had passed on, or experiences in meditation where you touched something vast and timeless. Maybe you've always sensed that there's more to existence than what meets the eye, but you've struggled to find a framework that honors both your spiritual intuition and your need for authentic understanding. This is where Cayce's legacy becomes so valuable for modern seekers. His readings weren't delivered in abstract mystical language that leaves us guessing about practical application. Instead, they offer concrete insights about how the hidden realms operate, how they interface with our daily lives, and how we can consciously cultivate our connection to these sacred dimensions. Whether you're dealing with relationship challenges, career transitions, health concerns, or simply the universal human longing to understand your purpose, Cayce's revelations about the spirit world provide both comfort and practical guidance. But here's what I find most moving about diving deep into these teachings. They remind us that we are not alone in this vast universe. The hidden realms that Cayce explored are populated with beings of light, guides, and the continuing presence of those we've loved. They are dimensions where healing flows freely, where wisdom is available to all who seek it genuinely, and where the love that connects all things can be experienced directly rather than simply believed intellectually. As we embark on this exploration together, I want you to know that your own experiences, your own questions, your own moments of spiritual recognition are not only welcome, they are essential to this conversation. The beauty of studying Cayce's work is that it doesn't ask you to abandon your critical thinking or suppress your personal experiences in favor of someone else's revelations. Instead, it invites you to use his insights as a lens through which to examine your own spiritual encounters more deeply. So I invite you to join this growing community of souls who are ready to explore these profound questions together. By becoming part of our journey here, you're not just accessing content, you're contributing to a collective awakening, a shared exploration of truths that have the power to transform how we understand ourselves and our place in the cosmos. Your insights, your questions, your own experiences with the mysterious dimensions of existence add richness to our collective understanding and help create a space where authentic spiritual exploration can flourish. Together, let's step through the veil that separates the seen from the unseen, the known from the mysterious, the temporal from the eternal. Let's discover what Edgar Cayce's sacred vision reveals about the hidden realms that surround us, support us, and call us home to our truest nature. There's something deeply unsettling about the moment you first realize that everything you thought you knew about reality might be just the tip of an iceberg so vast, so profound, that your mind can barely grasp its edges. I remember the first time someone mentioned the Akashic records to me. It was during one of those conversations that happen unexpectedly, usually when your soul is already raw and searching for answers that conventional wisdom simply couldn't provide. At the time, I was going through what I can only describe as a spiritual crisis, that dark night of the soul when everything you've built your identity upon seems to crumble, leaving you standing naked before the universe with nothing but questions that burn like open wounds. You know that feeling, don't you? That moment when life strips away all your carefully constructed defenses and forces you to confront the deeper mysteries of existence. Maybe it happened after a profound loss, when someone you loved disappeared from your physical world, leaving you to wonder if they were truly gone, or if love transcends the boundaries we call life and death. Perhaps it was during a period of intense suffering, when pain became your unwitting teacher, showing you dimensions of yourself you never knew existed. Or it might have been in a moment of inexplicable joy, when something so beautiful touched your consciousness that you knew, with absolute certainty, that this physical reality we navigate daily is but one layer of an infinitely complex and beautiful tapestry. Whatever brought you to this threshold of questioning, I want you to know that your arrival here is not accidental. The very fact that your consciousness is drawn to concepts like the Akashic records, to the possibility that there exists a cosmic library containing every thought, every emotion, every experience that has ever been lived by any soul throughout all of time. This attraction itself is a form of remembering. It's your deeper self recognizing a truth that your rational mind might struggle to accept, but that your soul knows with the same certainty that your heart knows how to beat. Edgar Cayce spent his life serving as a translator for truths that most of us can only sense in our quietest moments. When he spoke of the Akashic records, he wasn't describing some distant, mystical concept that only gifted psychics could access. He was pointing toward something that exists within the very fabric of consciousness itself, something that we are all connected to because we are all part of the same infinite story, being written across dimensions we're only beginning to understand. Think about those moments in your life when you've experienced what can only be called impossible knowing. Maybe you met someone for the first time, but the connection felt ancient, as if you were simply picking up a conversation that had been paused between lifetimes. Perhaps you've walked into a place you'd never been before, yet every corner felt familiar. Every shadow held memories that didn't belong to your current incarnation, but felt more real than yesterday's experiences. Or maybe you've awakened from dreams so vivid, so emotionally charged, that they seem to carry the weight of lived experience rather than the ethereal quality we usually associate with the dream state. These aren't anomalies or tricks of memory. According to Cayce's understanding, these are moments when the veil between your conscious awareness and the Akashic records becomes thin enough for information to flow through. You're not imagining the familiarity of that soul connection or the recognition of that sacred place. You're accessing memories that exist in a dimension where linear time dissolves, where past, present, and future exist simultaneously in what we might call the eternal now. But here's what makes this concept so personally transformative. If the Akashic records truly exist as Cayce described them, then every pain you've endured, every lesson you've learned, every moment of growth you've achieved is not lost when your physical body can no longer sustain life. Instead, it becomes part of an eternal library of wisdom that not only preserves your journey, but makes it available as guidance for other souls navigating similar challenges across time and space. This realization hit me like lightning during one of the darkest periods of my life. I was drowning in grief, convinced that all the love I'd poured into a relationship that ended, all the dreams that had been shattered, all the trust that had been broken, I believed it was all just waste, just cosmic cruelty with no redemptive purpose. But when I began to understand Cayce's vision of these records, I realized that even my deepest wounds, especially my deepest wounds, were creating pathways of understanding that could help heal not just my own soul, but potentially countless others who might face similar darkness in their own journeys. The pain doesn't disappear when you glimpse this larger perspective, but it transforms. It becomes sacred suffering, the kind that expands consciousness rather than simply tormenting it. Every tear you've cried in genuine vulnerability, every night you've stared at the ceiling wondering if you have the strength to continue, every moment when you felt utterly alone in your struggles, all of this becomes part of a universal database of human experience that helps weave the fabric of collective wisdom. And here's perhaps the most beautiful aspect of this understanding. If you can access the records of your own soul's journey through meditation, through dreams, through those moments of deep intuitive knowing, then you can also receive guidance from the accumulated wisdom of every soul who has walked a similar path before you. Imagine having access to the collected insights of every person who has ever faced heartbreak and found the courage to love again. Picture being able to draw upon the strength of every soul who has confronted impossible circumstances and discovered reserves of resilience they never knew they possessed. This is what Cayce meant when he spoke of these records as a source of healing and guidance. The interdimensional consciousness he described isn't some abstract spiritual concept. It's the recognition that your individual awareness is connected to a vast network of souls, all engaged in the same fundamental process of learning, growing, and evolving through experience. When you meditate deeply enough to touch this field of consciousness, you're not just accessing information. You're communing with the family of souls you've always belonged to, but somehow forgot in the intensity of physical incarnation. I've experienced this connection in ways that changed everything about how I understand my place in the universe. During periods of deep meditation, I felt myself expand beyond the boundaries of my individual identity, sensing the presence of what can only be described as my soul family, beings of consciousness who share my deepest values, who understand my core wounds and gifts, who celebrate my victories and offer comfort during my defeats. These aren't imaginary friends or wishful projections. They are the community of souls I've traveled with across countless incarnations, each of us taking turns playing different roles in the eternal drama of spiritual evolution. The sadness that once consumed me when I felt misunderstood or alone in this world has gradually transformed into a profound sense of belonging to something infinitely larger than any single lifetime could contain. The Akashic records, as Cayce revealed them, show us that we are never truly alone, never truly lost, never truly without purpose. Every experience we have, no matter how painful or confusing, is adding to the collective understanding of what it means to be conscious beings learning to love more fully, to serve more authentically, to forgive more completely. But accessing this wisdom requires a kind of surrender that our culture rarely teaches us. It asks us to release our attachment to being right, to having all the answers, to controlling outcomes. Instead, it invites us into a relationship with mystery, with the humbling recognition that there are dimensions of reality that can only be experienced, never fully explained. The interdimensional consciousness that Cayce described becomes available to us not through intellectual study alone, but through the willingness to soften our boundaries, to allow our awareness to expand beyond the familiar territory of our individual concerns. This is both the challenge and the gift of understanding these teachings. They offer us a framework for making sense of our deepest experiences, for finding meaning in our struggles, for recognizing the sacred thread that connects all souls in their journey toward greater consciousness. But they also ask us to live with questions that may never be fully answered, to trust in wisdom that comes through dimensions we can't see with our physical eyes, to believe in love that transcends the limitations of time and space. As I share these reflections with you, I'm aware that you might be in your own period of questioning, your own dark night of the soul, your own search for meaning that goes deeper than surface explanations can provide. If that's true, then please know that your searching itself is a prayer. Your questioning is a form of devotion. Your willingness to consider possibilities realities beyond conventional understanding is an act of courage that connects you to every seeker who has ever lived. The journey into understanding the Akashic records and our connection to interdimensional consciousness is not a destination, but a way of living, a way of approaching each day with the awareness that we are part of something magnificent and eternal. It's a path that asks us to treat every encounter as sacred, every challenge as curriculum, every moment of beauty as a glimpse into the true nature of reality. If these words have stirred something deep within you, if they've awakened memories or longings that feel both ancient and immediate, then I invite you to continue this exploration with us. There are so many layers to uncover, so many dimensions of wisdom to explore together. By joining our community of seekers, you become part of an ongoing conversation about the deepest mysteries of existence, and your own insights and experiences become part of the collective understanding we're building together. Your journey matters, your questions contribute to the greater questioning, and your willingness to explore these sacred territories helps create space for others to do the same. I want to tell you something that took me years to understand, something that Edgar Cayce tried to share with the world through his extraordinary gift, but that can only truly be grasped through the tender wisdom that comes from living through your own seasons of breaking and mending. There comes a moment in every soul's journey when the veil lifts just enough for you to glimpse the breathtaking truth that has been hidden in plain sight all along. This life you're living, with all its heartaches and victories, its moments of crushing despair and unexpected grace, is not random. It's not punishment. It's not even just about you in the way you might have always believed. You are part of something so magnificent, so carefully orchestrated across dimensions of time and space, that if you could see the full tapestry of your soul's eternal journey, you would fall to your knees in wonder. But here's the paradox that has kept me awake countless nights, staring into the darkness with tears streaming down my face. We can only catch these glimpses when we're broken open enough to receive them, when life has stripped away enough of our illusions that we can finally see beyond the narrow confines of our immediate circumstances. Maybe you know this feeling intimately. Perhaps you're in one of those seasons right now, where everything you thought you understood about your purpose, your relationships, your very identity, has been turned upside down. Maybe you've stood at the graveside of someone you loved more than your own breath, wondering how a universe that claims to be loving and purposeful could allow such devastating loss. Or perhaps you've found yourself in the wreckage of dreams you spent years building, watching everything you worked for crumble while questioning whether any of your choices ever mattered at all. I've been there, friend. I've sat in that darkness so complete that it felt like falling through endless space with no hope of landing anywhere safe. And it was precisely in those moments of complete surrender, when I had exhausted every strategy for controlling my circumstances and finally collapsed into the terrifying freedom of not knowing what comes next, that I began to understand what Cayce meant when he spoke of our eternal journey of spiritual awakening. The hidden realms he described through his readings aren't distant mystical places that we might visit if we're lucky enough to develop psychic abilities. They are the very foundation of everything we experience here in physical form. Every challenge you face, every relationship that breaks your heart wide open, every moment when you're forced to confront aspects of yourself you'd rather keep hidden, all of it is carefully designed curriculum for your soul's continuing education across multiple lifetimes and dimensions of existence. When I first encountered this perspective, I'll admit it felt almost insulting. You mean to tell me that the trauma I endured as a child, the betrayals that left me unable to trust, the losses that brought me to my knees, were all somehow part of some cosmic lesson plan? My initial reaction was anger, a fierce rejection of any worldview that would suggest my pain served some higher purpose. But as I sat with this resistance, as I allowed myself to feel the full force of my rage at the unfairness of existence, something unexpected began to emerge from the depths of that fury. What if the pain itself wasn't the point? What if the growth that came through learning to hold pain with compassion, to find strength I never knew I possessed, to discover that my heart could break completely and still somehow continue beating with even greater capacity for love? What if that transformation was what my soul had been seeking all along? Not the suffering for its own sake, but the opportunity to discover who I really am when everything I thought I was gets stripped away. This realization didn't make the pain disappear or suddenly make sense of every injustice I'd witnessed, but it did something far more profound. It gave me a framework for understanding that my individual struggles were part of a much larger story, one that extended far beyond the boundaries of this single incarnation. According to Cayce's vision, the challenges we face in this lifetime are often completion work for lessons that began in previous existences, opportunities to heal patterns that have been playing out across multiple incarnations until we finally develop the wisdom and strength to resolve them completely. But here's what makes this perspective so ultimately hopeful rather than overwhelming. It means that nothing you've endured has been wasted. Every tear you've cried in the darkness of your bedroom, every time you've had to rebuild yourself from scratch, touch. Every moment when you've chosen love over fear despite having every reason to protect yourself, all of these experiences are adding to the accumulated wisdom of your eternal self, creating a reservoir of understanding that will serve you not just in this lifetime, but in all the adventures your soul will undertake, beyond the boundaries of physical death. The hidden realms that surround us aren't separate from our daily existence. They're intimately involved in shaping every aspect of our earthly experience. When you suddenly know exactly what to say to comfort a friend in crisis, when you make a seemingly random decision that leads to a life-changing opportunity, when you feel inexplicably drawn to a particular place or person, you're receiving guidance from these deeper dimensions of yourself that exist beyond the limitations of your conscious mind. I remember the first time I truly felt this connection during meditation. I had been sitting quietly for what felt like hours, frustrated by my inability to quiet the constant chatter in my head, when suddenly, the boundaries of my individual awareness began to dissolve. I found myself existing in a space that felt both utterly familiar and completely beyond anything I'd ever experienced in physical reality. In that space, I encountered what I can only describe as my true self, not the personality I've developed in this lifetime with all its fears and defenses, but the eternal being who has been learning and growing across countless experiences in multiple dimensions. This expanded version of myself held memories of other lifetimes, other relationships, other challenges that helped me understand why certain patterns kept showing up in my current existence. But more importantly, this encounter filled me with a love so complete, so unconditional, that I understood for the first time that I had never been alone in any of my struggles. The wisdom I needed, the strength to continue, the love that could heal any wound. All of it existed within this eternal aspect of myself that physical death could never touch. Coming back to ordinary consciousness after that experience was like trying to squeeze an ocean into a teacup. How do you carry the memory of infinite love into a world that often feels cold and disconnected? How do you maintain connection to your eternal nature while dealing with grocery lists and broken relationships and all the mundane challenges that make up daily life? This is the ongoing work of spiritual awakening, learning to live simultaneously in both dimensions, to be fully present to your human experience while never forgetting your divine nature. The guidance that flows from the hidden realms doesn't usually come as dramatic visions or supernatural interventions. More often, it appears as subtle shifts in your intuition, as synchronicities that seem too meaningful to be coincidental, as dreams that carry messages your conscious mind couldn't formulate on its own. Learning to recognize and trust this guidance is like developing a new sense organ, one that perceives the deeper currents of meaning flowing through your everyday experiences. But perhaps the most profound gift of understanding our eternal journey is how it transforms our relationship with loss and change. When someone you love transitions from physical form, the grief doesn't disappear, but it evolves into something more complex and ultimately more beautiful. You begin to sense their continued presence in the hidden realms, to recognize the ways they continue to offer love and support from dimensions your eyes can't see, but your heart can feel. The relationships that matter most don't end with death. They simply shift into new forms of connection that transcend the limitations of physical proximity. This awareness has changed how I approach every aspect of life. Challenges that once felt like cosmic punishment now reveal themselves as opportunities for soul growth. Relationships that trigger my deepest wounds become sacred assignments for learning unconditional love. Even the mundane aspects of daily existence take on new meaning when understood as part of an eternal curriculum designed to help me become the fullest expression of who I truly am. The preparation for our continued existence beyond physical death isn't something that happens only at the end of life. It's happening in every moment when we choose growth over comfort, love over fear, service over selfishness. Every time we expand our capacity for compassion, every time we find the courage to forgive what feels unforgivable, every time we choose to see the sacred in the ordinary, we're strengthening our connection to the eternal dimensions of our being. As I share these reflections with you now, I'm aware that you might be in a place where such perspectives feel either deeply resonant or completely foreign. Wherever you are in your own journey of awakening, please know that your timing is perfect. The very fact that these ideas have reached you suggests that your soul is ready for whatever level of understanding feels authentic and helpful right now. The path of spiritual awakening isn't about achieving some final state of enlightenment where all questions are answered and all pain is resolved. It's about learning to live with greater awareness of the mystery that surrounds us, greater trust in the wisdom that guides us, and greater willingness to let love transform us in ways we never thought possible. It's about recognizing that we're all walking each other home to the truth of who we've always been, beneath the stories we've told ourselves about our limitations. If these words have stirred something within you, if they've helped you recognize aspects of your own eternal journey that you might have overlooked or undervalued, then I invite you to continue exploring these profound territories with our growing community of seekers. answers. There's so much more to discover about the hidden realms that shape our existence, so much wisdom to uncover about the sacred purpose underlying even our most challenging experiences. By joining us in this ongoing exploration, you become part of a collective awakening, a shared recognition that we are all much more than we appear to be, connected in ways that transcend time and space, supported by love that knows no boundaries.